I now move on to section 5.5, the article. The article in Hebrew is what we would call the or the in English. It functions to determine or limit the word it precedes, and therefore is like the definite article in English. And the usual form of the article is a hey with a pata under it, with a doggage forte or a doubling of the word that follows. So if you have the word kol, which means a voice, and you want to make it not a voice, and by the way, just the lack of the definite article can make it indefinite. There is not usually a word a or an that's placed in front of a word the way we do in English, but the lack of an article means that it's a or an. So here you have a voice, kol, but when you add the article, you take a hey, you have a pata, you double the kof, and you get hakol, the voice. Same thing with davar, word, a word. If you want to make it the word, it would be take a hey, take a pata, double the following consonant, and you get haddabar, haddavar, the word. Now, a funny thing happens when the article and the inseparable preposition come together. What's going to happen is that the hey of the article is going to disappear, and the shava under the inseparable preposition is going to disappear. The example here, you have the word sefer, which means a book. If you make it definite, you add a hey, you add a pata, you double the following consonant, so you get hasefer, hasefer, the book. Now, if you take book and add the indefinite a book and add the preposition, you want to talk about in a book, it would be besefer, besefer, accent over the samic here. But if you take hasefer and want to add the article, well, you add a bet with the shava, but what happens is that the bet will supplant, I always describe it like squash, the hay, smash it into the vowel, and so what you end up with is basefer. Should have been a behasefer, but they got lazy. Behasefer slurred together and became basefer. And so the only indication of the definite article is that pata. That pata that indicates that the original vowel here is a pata related to article hey. And so before the Masoretes came along, there was actually no difference in the way they wrote besefer and basefer in a book and in the book. Here they vocalized it on the assumption that the article is there. Here they have vocalized it on the assumption that the article is not there. But we'll assume that in most cases the Masoretes are right in the vowels that they put in during the Christian era. And the way that they would indicate the article would be the vowel that's under the inseparable. If it's the vowel of the article, well, then it's definite. If it's the shava, that's what normally comes with the inseparable prepositions ba and la and ka, then it will be indefinite. A little bit on the use of the article. The article may signify the noun, the king, as opposed to somebody else. The article could serve as the functional equivalent of a demonstrative. You have that particularly with time. The day, hayom, in context can mean this day or today. Hayom is either the day, but it can also be this day or today. Sometimes you use the article when you're trying to emphasize the abstract nature of something. So we would do that by making it indefinite, but no articles. Gold, but they don't talk about gold. They will talk about the gold. Hazahav. And so it's the gold, not simply gold. And then sometimes it's used as a vocative. A vocative is when you're addressing someone. And so when you speak to a king, you will say, may you live forever, Hamelech, O king. And if you translate it, the king, well, that contextually doesn't really make any sense. It's when you address someone, you will often have the article. So the most usual usage is just the same as our article the, but in certain words it can be like a demonstrative, the day meaning this day or today, sometimes abstractions, and sometimes used as a vocative. At this point, Ross introduces a discussion of the Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton is the symbol representing the divine name for God in the Old Testament, Yahweh. And it consists of 4 letters, Yod, He, Vav, He. And this was emphasized to Moses in Genesis 3:14, where it was explained to Moses that I am who I am, Eheye, Asher Eheye, and it relates that divine name, Yahweh, is in the verses that follow, to the verb to be, Hayah, which means he was or the like. Eheye means he is or he will be. At least since the Babylonian exile, Jews have considered this name too holy to be pronounced. And so what the Masoretes did was that whenever the divine name Yahweh occurs, they have substituted the vowels of Yahweh for the vowels of another word, usually Adonai, Lord. And so here you have Yod He Vav He. You would expect it to be a patah and a shavah, Yah, and then a segol under the vav, Yahweh. But what they do instead is they take the shavah from the hataf patah shavah of Adonai. The half vowel would not be appropriate for a yod, besides it's a skinny letter, not room for it. And they take the kamats of Adonai, the a vowel here, and put it under the vav. Sometimes they'll add the holum, depending on which exact tradition is being followed. So you get a shavah and a holum and a kamatz here, but that is clearly not the original pronunciation of the divine name. Now, if you try to pronounce it with those extra letters, you would pronounce it Yehovah or Jehovah, and that's where our English word Jehovah comes from. But that was never a term for God used by Jews. Rather, when the reader saw these consonants with those vowels, that was an indication, pronounce this word rather than the consonants that you see. So they see Yahweh, but they will say Adonai. Now, the correct pronunciation of the 4 letters Yod He Vav He, or the Tetragrammaton, has been the subject of considerable debate, but the scholarly consensus is that the correct pronunciation is Yahweh, or perhaps with a hataf segol Yahweh. And support for this is found in proper names that have the divine name in it, like Elijah, Eliyahu. Here you get Yah, and then a shortened form of Yahweh, Yahu, And then Zechariah is Zachariah, again a short form of Yahweh at the end. And support is also gathered from familiar expression in the Psalms that exhorts the congregation to praise the Lord, which is hallelujah. The word Lord is Yah, which is short for Yahweh. Again, that's an indication that that's the correct pronunciation of that word. But anyway, in this grammar, in Ross, he always vocalizes it with a shavah under the first consonant and a kamatz under the vav, though there are forms of printing of the Hebrew text that will add the holum there as well. And when reading the Hebrew text, we're going to substitute the word Adonai, except when we just want to make a point and say Yahweh. Another way of showing this, in English, it shows up as the Lord with a special font called all caps, L-O-R-D, all capital letters, although it's called small caps because when you make it a lowercase letter, it's a little shorter than the capital letter, but it's still capital letters as far as it looks. And so that's Yahweh is usually in the Hebrew Bible vocalized as, usually in the English translations is translated the Lord, spelled that way, going back to Adonai, which means Lord. In other cases, you can transliterate it Yahweh, spelled this way, or just put the Tetragrammaton itself without any vowels, Yod He Vav He, which is the name that is not to be pronounced. While we're on the topic of the Tetragrammaton, I should mention that sometimes the Masoretes put in yet another word as a substitute for the divine name Yahweh. For example, if one were to go to the Hebrew texts of Amos chapter 1 and verse 8, you have the expression here, Adonai, and then the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He. Most translations will translate that Lord, capital L, but small letters otherwise, God, with a capital G, capital O, capital D, Lord God, although literally it's Lord Yahweh. And the problem is that Adonai already means Lord, so you wouldn't want to say Lord, Lord. That would be redundant. And the Masoretes gave the hint. They put the vowels actually for the word God, or Elohim. So you have a Shavah for Elohim. You could have the O for Elohim, and then you have the Hirik for the final consonant Im of Elohim. And so what they did, they put the vowels of Elohim under the consonant for Yahweh to tell you don't say Yahweh, and don't even say Adonai, say Elohim. So this would be pronounced Adonai Elohim, even though technically what it shows is Adonai Yahweh, at least in terms of the consonants. Well, we'll continue this in the next video.